My name is Brady Schomburg, and the title of this speech is The Variety of Architecture in Portsmouth. Now, many of us are Shawnee students. One day you're walking to class and you notice a building that's very attractive to you. You think that's not very common. You don't typically see buildings like that in Portsmouth. Portsmouth kind of gets a bad reputation of having the same cookie-cutter house over and over again on every single road. But I'm here to tell you that that's actually not the case, and that Portsmouth has a wide variety of architecture. I will explain this by talking about the Boneyfiddle Commercial District, the Old Monastery, and Shawnee State University. So firstly, the Boneyfiddle Commercial District, which is found primarily on Market Street and 2nd Street. Now, Market Street is primarily composed of three similar architectural styles: the Federal style, the Greek Revival style, and the Italianate style. Now, these three styles all primarily are focused in the town style, while they're in Market Street, which just basically means that they're lined up building after building after building. Now, the Federal style. The Federal style features large windows and very simple lintels above the window and very simple cornice at the top of the building. This is because the time period when the Federal style was originally constructed, settlers were not so much concerned with being detailed. Now, the Greek Revival style is very similar, but would have featured shutters and also columns. And the columns are primarily found in the storefronts of these buildings on the first floor, which is where they draw their Greek Revival style from. Shutters are not as commonly found in Market Street because time has evolved and they are not as necessary anymore as we have stronger windows and curtains. But with the inclement weather on the river, they would have been essential to early constructions. Now, the Italianate style is the most decorative of these three styles. It features decorative and rounded lintels over the windows, which is basically just a windowsill, but on the top. It also features decorative cornice with carved plasterwork. Now, aside from Market Street, the Boneyfiddle District also contains 2nd Street, where you'll find more of the turn-of-the-century Beaux Arts style, which is very similar to the Italianate style in its decorative construction. Also on 2nd Street is a few buildings in the Gothic style, primarily the Patties and Pints building with its dramatic spire and dark brickwork. Now, another popular example of Gothic architecture that you'll find in Portsmouth is the Old Monastery building. Now, the Old Monastery was constructed in the 1930s in what would have been the Gothic Revival style. Also popular around this time was the Tudor Revival style, which you can see in the Old Monastery through its detailed woodwork on the inside. Now, the Gothic Revival style you will find primarily on the outside of the building through its battlements around the roofline and through the crisscross pattern of the medieval style windows. Now, the monastery was sold to the Nuns of Mercy Hospital around the 1950s, at the same time that Shawnee State University, which was then an OU extension, began growing. Now, Shawnee State is the institution we all know today, but many of its buildings have their own diverse architecture. Firstly, Massey Hall. Massey Hall is built in the Dutch Colonial Revival style, which was prevalent in the 1960s when it was built. You can tell this because of the steeply gabled roofs, which then flatten out to a peak at the top. We can see in early photographs from the Scioto County Public Library in 1975 of the white trim and the columns, which are also emulative of the Dutch Revival style that Massey Hall was constructed in. It has since been modified to darker trims and darker windows. Another unique example is the Vern Riffe Center for the Arts. Now, the Vern Riffe Center for the Arts was constructed in the 1980s postmodern style, which you can tell by the angled roofs, the large glass fronts, and the geometric shapes. On the inside of the building, you can see a large atrium, which was also popular in the 1980s modern style as they enjoyed bringing in light. The University Tower at the University Center is also an example of 1980s postmodern architecture. Now, architecture in Portsmouth has a great variety, from Boneyfiddle to the Old Monastery to Shawnee State University. And these buildings go much further than the cookie-cutter mold that you will typically find in the architectures of Portsmouth.